The Juneau World Affairs Council presents Mongolia Today, Profile, Strengths and Politics, with Tsogtbaatar Damdin. Mr. Tsogtbaatar is a former cabinet minister and newly elected member of the Mongolian Parliament, the state Great Ural.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking interest in Mongolia. And irrespective of the fact that today is holiday in Alaska, you found time to come over here to listen and find out more about Mongolia. So on behalf of our team here, we thank you, and we also would like to extend our greeting on this special day of Alaska. I understand this is the day when 55 years ago, Alaska was handed over to the United States. So accept our greetings. Now, as you probably saw, the previous video was not about Mongolia. So the real story about Mongolia is going to start now. I changed the title of the presentation a little bit because I really thought on the way here, what should I be trying to portray about Mongolia? And of course, Mongolia is a unique country located in Central Asia, a small country. There are a lot of stories to it, but the most important thing about Mongolia, I really wanted to highlight the wisdom of the steppes, because the small population, small country of Mongolia really had to persevere. The Mongolians had to persevere and find harmony with the nature, and also find harmony with the neighbors, which are exceeding in terms of number, exceeding in terms of their cultural ability to influence, and in that environment to survive up to now and keep its own unique culture and stay what we are really takes a lot of wisdom of adaptability, wisdom of really cohesiveness, coherence with the environment, with the neighbors. And therefore, I also wanted you to give some sense of the wisdom that really, was brewed or was created, emerged out of the steppes. Now, Mongolia. So first, I wanted you to take draw your attention to what Mongolia stands in terms of its geographical location. So you can see that Mongolia is at the crossroads of culture, tradition, religion, and political ideology. And surprisingly, you can see that, for example, the political ideology from the West going through Russia was coming to Mongolia and facing the Oriental culture, and it was stopping there. And then from there onwards to the south, you would see totally Oriental culture. Or if you go from south of Mongolia, then from south you would see Oriental mentality, culture coming up to Mongolia, getting transformed and mixed up with a bit of European influence. And then further, you would transform it into the European culture, political tradition. So, for example, if you take communism, Mongolia was the second communist country in the world. So, communism was not an Oriental idea. It didn't come about in Asian countries. Communism was a Western idea. In Germany, in Britain, first it really came up, and then it was implemented in the eastern part of Europe, like in Russia. So from our Oriental perspective, communism was not an Oriental idea. It was a Western idea that came to Mongolia. But here you can see one interesting thing. Yes, no matter how inefficient was communist system, an oppressive communist system was. But the interesting thing is that as a Western, or as an idea that had its origin in the West, came and settled in Mongolia, and it was the first Asian country to embrace communism. And then from there on, China, Indochina, many countries became communist. In other words, what I really try to portray here is that this is not only the crossroads, but very often this is the heralding country of which ideology is going to be prevailing in the next century in the region. For example, democracy. If you take democracy, Mongolia, after living through a communist regime, it was the first country that was part of the satellites of the Soviet Union, first Central Asian country that embraced democracy in a true sense, and the first Central Asian country that went into or accepted parliamentary form of democracy. All other Central Asian countries went into presidential system. So again, in our Central Asia, again, we were the first when the democratization throughout the world started. We were the first to embrace this Western ideology of freedom. And then from Mongolia, it really went on to many other Central Asian countries. And today, for example, Kyrgyzstan, first they, they accepted presidential system of democracy. And now they transformed into a parliamentary system, and now they're sort of in the initial stage of developing their Westminster parliamentary system. I also remember either Moldova, I think it is Moldova, out of Eastern European countries, that has changed their system from presidential system into a parliamentary system. In other words, the Mongolian experience, again, is helping or influencing other countries. So what I really want to say is that, yes, Mongolia may look a small country, but it is a country that can influence also in terms of ideology many other countries, irrespective of its small, size. I mean, territory-wise, it is not a small country, which we will come back to that. Now, religious, again, beliefs. If you see Christianity coming from the West, and then in Mongolia it transforms. Further to the east, you would have Buddhist cultures and Buddhist religions, or Confucianism, Taoism, and also these are both philosophies, political philosophies, and also a bit of a religion in there as well. So again, this transformation you can see out of the territory of Mongolia. Muslim religion also, from the West it goes and stops there. We have here a prominent member of Parliament of Mongolia, Mr. Murat. He's a representative of our ethnic minority, and he's a Muslim. He's Kazakh. So in the West, Muslim religion stops, and then further it goes into Buddhist religion. So as you can see, and Buddhism came from India, all the way India through Tibet, and comes to Mongolia. And again, comes to Mongolia, and from Mongolia further on it transforms into Christian cultures. So in short, this is a country that was heralding the new ideology, new ideas, and that was influencing other countries. So in other words, Mongolia may be small, but it can influence historical processes. Especially if you take 800 years ago, it was in fact changing human history. And that great empire, up until today, left its imprints in modern societies. For example, diplomatic immunity. That very concept was the concept designed by Imperial Court of Genghis Khan. Or religious tolerance. It was a reality in the 13th century, and in 21st century, we're far from being religiously tolerant. So at that time, Genghis Khan was exercising and practicing this religious tolerance. Now, underneath you can see, again, when I was talking about this wisdom, this is a saying of the Mongols: listen to the words of a stranger from afar. This is, since this childhood, these are the words that we always hear, our parents used to tell us in order to understand this steppe wisdom. In other words, when I look into these sayings, proverbs of the steppe civilization of our ancestors, I really see them as an encoded, encrypted, shortened message of their great wisdom and philosophy. And from generation to generation, it was passing on to us, and without us noticing, it was becoming our culture. And these were the recipes when we were facing tough choices, tough challenges of the steppes. These were the messages and guides that were taking us out of these difficulties. So this very idea, listen to the words of a stranger from far afar, is a very nomadic idea. Therefore, we were always listening to the ideas that were going beyond our neighbors. For example, Buddhism. China is a Taoist and Confucianist society, but our ancestors deliberately choose Buddhism from India in order to prevent, in order to keep and preserve their national identity, in order to be unique and not to get assimilated or be driven by a dominant philosophy and culture. And then again, when it comes to democracy in the 20th century, again we went beyond our neighbors and we started looking into Eastern Europe, and what was going on in Europe charged the psyche and mentality of the Mongolian elite, and that's how democratic changes started in Mongolia. So again, it is a very nomadic value to listen to people and to their ideologies from afar and try to embrace them. Now, these are fundamental figures about Mongolia. What is the size of the territory? 1.5 million square kilometers. So it is the 19th biggest country. So in other words, yes, we call ourselves small country, but territory-wise, if there are about 200 countries and territories on earth, we're the 19th. And therefore, it is not a small country, especially given the fact that we're only 3.1 million. In terms of sparse population, in terms of density, we are really one of the least densely populated countries. So per person, we have the biggest territory compared to any other country in the world. So from that perspective, it is really not a small country. But again, here I want to say again, draw your attention to the Mongolian proverb. Of course, you could translate it into the right equivalent in English, but I was translating it almost word by word in order to give, every nation has its own wisdom, but the forms are different, and these forms of expression are formulated on the basis of what you see, what you experience, and the experience of steppes is very different from the experience of woods or of the ocean, surrounded countries. And therefore, I was really giving almost word-by-word translation of these proverbs and sayings. Magpies in concert can hunt a deer. I don't know if in reality magpies hunt deer or not. But the very wisdom that our ancestors wanted us to know was that you may be small, but if you're united, then even a magpie can beat a deer. That is the message, fundamental message that our ancestors were really trying to give us. And every Mongolian, again, knows this word, and they grow up on these words. And the important thing is that if you are only 3 million people, and your neighbors are at least 10 times bigger than you are, and it was like that not only in the 20th century, during the Genghis Khan time, the number of Mongolian population never exceeded 3 million. And yet they could conquer and create the landmass empire that is unmatched up until now. In other words, the strength of the empire at that time was the unity of these few people. And when the few people went united, and Chinggis Khan spent most of his time uniting these separate tribes. You know, his overseas conquest started after he was 50. So up until his 50s, he had to work on uniting Mongols, these few Mongols. Once it was united, they could do a great, you know, they could influence history a great deal. So that is the message that every Mongolian carries in their psyche. And therefore, in this harsh terrain, you know, to survive in the steppes, it's not an easy business. For example, here you have minus 20, minus 30 in some places, but you have woods. You have wood to put in your fireplace. Out in Gobi, you don't have woods, but you still have minus 40s, minus 30 degrees. And you have to survive. Not only survive, you had to thrive. And that is achieved through this unified, concerted, you know, efforts of Mongolians. And together they have created this great nomadic steppe culture. Now, performance of Mongolia. Here I wanted to talk about the good times of the Mongolian economy. When we, in the early 90s, embarked on democratization, what happened was that the country really had to change. So the economy was fundamentally changing. People had to fundamentally change their mentality. It was really, these were tough times. And the economy collapsed. Everything collapsed. People, in order to buy bread, they had to stand in the queues for hours. In order to buy a liter of milk, they had to stand in the queue for hours. And yet, at that time, again, Mongols collectively believed that democracy was a better system than the communist past that we have just abandoned. And therefore, this united belief carried us through very tough times. And then in the middle of, in 2007 onwards, up to 2013, 15, we started having pretty fast growth. So in 2011, for example, the GDP of Mongolia reached 17.5%. Ahead of us that year was only Qatar, you know, and Mongolia was the second fastest growing economy. And within only a decade, the GDP per capita of Mongolia, in 2000, it was 466, right? And in 2015, it reached 4,300. So it really, within almost a decade with odds, the GDP per capita of Mongolia grew tenfolds. So these were the times of success. But, and underneath I'm giving the Mongolian proverb, times are as impermanent as the blue color of the iris. So iris is a grass that produces this blue, nice flower. But the flower doesn't stay that blue and beautiful forever. And that we should have remembered. And because of this spoiling effect of sudden growth, we have forgotten what our ancestors told us. And we really, the government started spending. The government started this flamboyant behavior. We really thought, oh, tough times are behind us, now ahead of us, only good times. But welcome to market economy. It has its ups and downs. And therefore, we really, because of this very profligatory policies, went into shallow waters. And now our economy is facing a great deal of difficulty. Actually, in 2015 we put, the GDP growth was 7.8%. But imagine, it was on the way down. It was really collapsing from 17.5% downwards. And today it's standing at around 3%. Of course, 3% compared to many of the European countries in crisis, still not a bad indicator. But compared to from where it was falling, it was a really free fall. And therefore, that effect is painfully being felt by our economy and by the businesses. So we're really trying to get out of this, and we are trying to be more attractive for foreign businesses, including Alaskan businesses are really welcome to Mongolia, because you coming from this environment as well, you would find there people that would be thinking pretty close to the way you think and you see, life. And therefore, there could be a very good psychological comfort in doing business with the Mongolians. So we're really trying to improve our foreign investment environment. We are trying to keep our legislative environment stable, and taxation in Mongolia has been very low. It's 10% flat. Now, with these economic difficulties, we will have to raise taxes, but still we are committed to keep our economy liberal and open, and to have incentives that would be pushing forward the entrepreneurship of our businesses. Now, what was driving Mongolia's economy to this great speed? Mostly mining. And we've learned our lessons. Mining is a risky business. It can bring tides, but it can take away these tides very fast. So, therefore, now we're also thinking of and strategizing of other alternatives that would be leading Mongolia and pushing Mongolia to a progress, irrespective of fluctuation of mineral resources and commodities prices. So, for example, this is just an example. Renewable energy is seen by Mongolia as one of the potential generators of growth. And Mongolia is located, right, again, wind-wise, right on the crossroads of northerly winds. So the winds that get formed on the territory of Russia in Siberia and in the Arctic seas really like through the tunnel, because on the eastern side you have Altai Mountains, on the western side you have Altai Mountains, on the eastern side you have Hingan Mountains, and these plain steppes of Mongolia are really getting this effect of turbine or a channel, and the winds really go through Mongolia, and we're right located on the right spot for the winds, and therefore wind energy is one of the potential sources of our growth. Sun, this is a sunny country. Almost 360 something days we have sun in Mongolia, and therefore sun. Once I was talking to a very prominent physician from the Geneva Physics Center, and he was telling, look, we're talking about the sun, and sun is the major source of energy, and every source of energy that we're using today somehow got the sun energy in it and sucked in it, and then it preserved in it, starting from carbohydrates. This is the sun energy we're eventually using back. So, therefore, in Mongolia, sun energy with these sunny days has every potential to lead Mongolia into the growth on a long-term basis. And water. We're in Gobi Altai IMEC, we built a hydropower plant. Again, when we started this, a lot of Greens, a lot of skeptics were laughing at it. They were against it. They were saying that this is going to destroy the whole environment, etc. Irrespective of that, with, I think, the Emirati fund assistance, we built a hydropower plant. And on the contrary, it took a couple of years before the tunnel really was filled with water. And when it was not yet filling, for a couple of years, the government had to, tolerate sharp criticism. But afterwards, when the water level went up and now the power plant is operational, the ecosystem out there has changed. Now in that pool you have a lot of fish, you have a lot of ducks coming in. And in other words, the ecosystem became milder. The water can be used for other economic purposes as well. So in other words, very often we Mongols approach things with criticism, with skepticism. But later on, when you see that well-calculated projects start producing, benefits, people adhere to these ideas and they support it further. So, and now that we're talking about the water, I would like to draw your attention to this saying of the Mongols: rock never beats rock, but water does. And it's surprising. Now today, with the technological advance, we know that there are water saws that really can cut through metals and cut through very hard fabric of various bodies. But Mongols knew it for centuries. And for example, snuff bottle is a precious or semi-precious stone bottles. And the inner side of it was drilled with great care and it was polished with water. And only with water you can get this perfect polishing of the surface of the water. And also in the rivers, if you want to really have a very smooth surface on the stone, if you try to do it with the stone, you won't get that perfect polished surface. In the river, you get it because water works on it, and it really sort of polishes its surface to the perfection. And that was observed by Mongols. In other words, the wisdom behind this word is that you do not do things through strength and hard approach. Very often, flexibility, tolerance, ability to understand your partners, and cooperative approach, soft policy, soft diplomacy, soft approach can, achieve much further objectives than through toughness, through stubbornness. And that was the, philosophy of Mongols. And irrespective of us being small, even after the collapse of Mongolian Empire, the fact that we could preserve our culture, the secret is also in those words and in that approach of Mongols to the life issues. Now, foreign policy. Mongolian foreign policy starting from 1990s, we were pursuing open, transparent, multi-pillar foreign policy with continuity. So we wanted to be predictable to our friends. We wanted to be transparent. We wanted to be honest because we really believed that honesty earns more friends than dishonesty. When you are having no hidden agenda, people cooperate with you more. And that is the idea behind our foreign policy. And also, we have in Mongolia this saying that who has friends thrives. So, in other words, before 1990s, we had only Comecon countries as our friends. Surprisingly, at that time, because of Sino-Soviet conflict, for Mongolia, what sort of system we had in terms of international relations was that physically we had a big neighbor called China. But in reality, it did not exist for us. Starting from 60s, we had virtually no relationship with China. No relations, no trade, no investment, and no tourism. It was just an enemy that was to the south from us. All we were doing was that we were building up our army, getting ready to go to war, and that's it. And that was up to 1990s. And then starting from 1990s, when we started developing our own foreign policy based on the centuries-old values of the Mongols, we changed it to this. So instead of having few friends and instead of being part of divisive policies, we decided to have as many friends as possible. And that really helped Mongolia a great deal. So therefore, with our two neighbors, we have a policy of equidistance. We treat them equally. We treat them equally, and we try to keep the equal distance from both. Whereas we have developed concept of third neighbor. And then many people ask, well, you have only two neighbors. But look, in the 21st century, neighborhood is not a physical concept. Very often we are trading in terms of investment. Our, very big investors. Now China is one of the top investors. But up until recently, the top investors were Japan, the United States, Canada, Australia. These were top investors. So they were, in terms of investment and creating jobs to the hearts of Mongols, they were much closer than the physical neighbors. So in other words, Mongols really started believing that in this new century, it's not important who you actually physically in contact with, but who you actually spiritually in contact with. That also matters, and that makes difference. It's not an abstract concept anymore in the 21st century. And because it's not abstract, we want to capitalize on that new, era. And especially modern technology, information communication technology, is making this third neighbor policy real and not an abstract concept. So we have diplomatic relations with 188 countries, and plus the Holy See and European Union have diplomatic relations with us, and we have we maintain 45 embassies and consulates abroad. So if any one of you want to travel to Mongolia, there are plenty of places where you could pick up your visa and come to Mongolia. And if someone doesn't issue a visa to you, let me know and we'll talk about it. Huh? Oh, sorry. Yeah. By the way, the U.S. doesn't have visa, so no. I was talking about Canadian citizens. He could be Canadian citizens as well. Canada as well? Yeah. Okay. I was Secretary of State of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for quite some time, and foreign policy advisor to two presidents, and I was really among those who were making decision to waive visa for countries like the United States and Canada. But I've been out of diplomatic service for the last 4 or 5 years, and therefore I start forgetting things. So sorry, but thank you. Ayundari was our Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs until 1 year ago, and therefore her memories are fresh, so she's helping me out. Here, about the cultural aspects of Mongolians, and for tourists, the most attractive days of Mongolia is in July the 11th to 13th. It is our national festival, and during that festival we have wrestling, horse racing, and archery. Again, this dates back to the times of Chinggis Khan, and at that time these were not just festivals. These were military training, and therefore from that time onwards we kept these traditions, and this is a very colorful events and sports competitions that we have out in Mongolia. But now I also would like you to look into the Olympics of Mongolia. That's also part of our today's culture. And having only 3 million people, we have per capita a lot of Olympic champions, world champions, and especially in the field of judo, boxing, and archery. And once I remember in 2008, an American friend of mine, Jamie Metzel, he was vice president of Asia Society. He was in Beijing, and he asked me, well, the US is, gonna get medals in swimming, and he mentioned a lot of areas where the US was gonna get medals, and he asked me, what Mongolia is good at? And I just was taken aback. It was a sudden question, and I answered him, well, whatever that causes, lets blood out of the nose and causes brain concussion, we might be good at. The reaction was exactly what you have now. He laughed at me. And then in September, he writes me a letter. Tsogt, you are right. You have judo Olympic champion in judo, you have Olympic champion in boxing, and you have Olympic champion in archery. So all of these are either lets blood out of the nose or causes brain concussion. But why I wanted to talk about this, one of the ideas that I was raising with the authorities here, with the authorities here in Alaska was that we could send over here on the basis of exchange coaches, for example, in judo. There are not many world-class, expertise fields that we Mongols have. But in judo, yes, we do have world-class coaches, and they could come over here and, staying here for some short period of time, they could teach school kids into the techniques of judo, so that they really take also interest in this, martial arts. At the same time, it's a field of sports with philosophy. Judo is not about having somebody on the mat, but it's about respect. It's about understanding the surrounding environment. It's finally about the cooperation. And therefore, being a Japanese culture, it is really built on the philosophy of respecting your surrounding environment. And it's very consonant with Mongolian culture, and it could be very useful also for the American Alaskan kids. So that was one of the ideas that I was talking about. And environmental preservation was also another idea where we could cooperate. Now, tourism. Again, when we're talking about Mongolia, this Nadam or the National Festival, ecotourism are the attractive points that could bring tourists into Mongolia. And when we're talking about tourism, still tourism, irrespective of its potential, it's not, fulfilling its potential. It's not there yet. And you can see that if you take the direct contribution into our GDP, it's only 1.6%. Employment-wise, the direct employment constitutes only 1.4% of the total. It could be much bigger than that, and our government has to spend more resources and time and develop better policies in order to bring visitors in. And, visitor exports only 200 million and investment is 600 million. But investment is 12.9%. That's already a good indicator. And that is something on which we should be capitalizing. Now, if you take a look into the biodiversity, this country can really offer a lot of species of animal that you wouldn't see elsewhere. And that could be also a very interesting thing that could attract foreign tourists. And well, especially snow leopard. These are very endangered animals. Przewalski horse went extinct in 60s in Mongolia, and now we successfully reintroduced. They were preserved only in the zoos of Europe, Ukraine, Austria, Czech Republic, and we brought them into Mongolia. Now they're really a wild animal, fighting for their fowls with the wolves. And they're least sort of guarded. They're on their own and thriving in their own environment. So this is also a very good environmental project which could attract foreign attention. And this is a gobi bear. For Alaskans, this could be an interesting phenomenon because usually people think about Ursus arctos as an animal that lives in the woods. They live in the desert, and it is almost a purely vegetarian bear. And we recently established through our research that it's a subspecies. In other words, no wood bear or forest bear could survive in the terrain where this animal survives. And you know how many of them we have now left? 22. So therefore, it requires attention. And many people talk about, many people talk about pandas. Panda population exceeds gobi bear population almost 1,000 times, right? Whereas this animal is really on the brink of extinction, and we should do really something. And it's not only the job of Mongolian government. It is a human heritage. It is an issue of biodiversity. So it's our heritage, and therefore I'm, asking in talking to Alaskan authorities, I'm asking to take part in our endeavors and to start something so that we could bring in later on many more players into the project of saving this animal. Now, yes, and Mr. Murat's, culture, again, talking about tourism. Probably you heard about this eagle hunter girl, Aishalpan, and it was a BBC movie. It went really viral, and little 11 or 13-year-old girl training a real, eagle, and then she hunts with the eagle. And there was a movie on this, and now this girl is being invited to Harvard University, and she was offered, I understand, scholarship, and she will be doing her studies here. But the culture, she comes here, her culture stays there. And therefore, for many tourists, the Bainulgi Aymak, or the westernmost province of Mongolia, could be a place to go and take a look at this unique Muslim culture. Now, as for the saying, an unwise one talks about food, while a wise one talks about the land's sin. This is, in no other culture I have seen this arrogant approach to food. In every other culture, people talk about cuisine, how nice that restaurant was, how nice the sushi in that restaurant was. But in Mongolia, talking about food was not something that was valued. But Mongols, as nomads and as remnants or descendants of a great empire, what they valued was that, how much have you seen? How big is your vision? And by that, they were measuring, somebody's success. And therefore, when it comes to tourism, what's important for Mongols is to go around the world and to see as much of it as possible. So, therefore, again, this word was really calling Mongols not to stay in one place, but to go and get to know the wide world that is around us. Agriculture. So now I'll be pretty fast. Agriculture, we have the major 5 animals that Mongolian cattle farmers, breed. Horse, cows, camel, sheep, and goat. And we have 70 million cattle. So our cattle exceeds us, what, 20 times? And they are constitutionally protected. And I'm not joking. In our constitution, there is a provision. Cattle is protected. In other words, this protection is a protection of nomadic culture. And that is constitutional matter to us. Because our nomadic culture, no matter how industrial Mongolia may become, but a Mongol culture can stay there only if we could preserve our island of nomadism and nomadic culture. And therefore, that provision in the Constitution will be guiding us to keep our identity. And that we see almost as a matter of national security. So, and therefore, our animal is also one potential area of Mongolia's growth, because we are rich in animal and cattle. I remember I was talking to a Uruguayan Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he was saying that we're a big exporter of, cows and bovine meat, beef. And I asked, how many cattle do you have? And he said, 12 million. And that year alone, to a bad snowstorm, Mongolia lost 11-something million, and still we had a bunch of other animal, left. And I was thinking, well, if you develop a good breed of animal, even with that number, a country can thrive. So if with 12 million, Uruguay could become one of major exporters of beef. We, with our 70 million, could become a serious exporter of meat. And that is another potential area that we should be developing. And of course, on the basis of this, leather industry, fur industry, etc. All of this, all of this is a potential driver of Mongolia's growth. Now, again, here, make friends while the father is around. See the world while horses are in abundance or abundant. You see, again, that culture of not staying in one place, but really moving around, seeing the world, and opening your eyes is the psyche of nomads. Now, another, sector in agriculture, land farming. Starting from 1990s, land farming collapsed. We did not have land farming at all. And then only in 2008, I think, we started this new program of land farming. And within 3 years, from zero, Mongolian farmers could produce so much crop that we became in wheat self-sufficient. In vegetable, I think 70 to 80% self-sufficient. So in other words, Ayundari is from northern province of Mongolia, where they grow all the vegetable and crops. And she always takes pride in it that we live of her province. She provides bread on our table. And we're thankful to her for that as well. So land farming is also a very good potential area of growth in Mongolia. Kashmir. Mongolia could be a small country, but in terms of cashmere supply, we're number 2 in the world after China. So from Kashmir perspective, Mongolia is a big supplier and big player that impacts world markets in Kashmir. And Mongolian Kashmir is one of the best in the world. But again, climate change, many people may say, climate change, is it real or not? In Mongolia, whether educated or not, our shepherds know the impact. It makes difference. In 60, globally, world temperatures rose 1 degree within 100 years, last 100 years. In Mongolia, within the last 60 years, it grew 2 degrees. And the production of Kashmir got reduced. The quality of Kashmir got reduced because this biological body of the goat tells it's warmer. Let's not produce so much Kashmir. And therefore, already in the livelihood of shepherds, it is felt. But yet, still Mongolian Kashmir, even with the global effect of, negative effect of global warming, it stays number 2 exporter of Kashmir, and it is one of the best. And therefore, Kashmir could be another growth area of Mongolia in the future. And in Alaska, Kashmir products probably could sell well because it's a cold, state. Now, here again the proverb, raising cattle feeds life. Raising cattle is a very difficult job. You wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, especially when young, offsprings are born. Cattle farmers almost do not sleep. And they have to look after their young. And then day and night during the lactation season, they have to milk their animal twice a day. And when you're talking about milking, it's not 1, 2 cow. It is 50, 60 goats that you have to milk twice a day, etc. So it's a very hard work. And this word, raising cattle, is the idea behind it is that work hard as cattle farmers do, and then you can live, in abundance. So that is the message also that our ancestors, brought across time to us. Now, the government system. Here it's a very interesting proverb that to me it's in English, for English it would be interesting, We say, when the nobility is in discord, the commons are in discomfort. So, exactly the economic crisis is not an economic crisis. Economic crisis is caused by the conflicts, discord among the politicians. And there, a lot of big businesses, vested interests, also kicks into the politics in Mongolia, thereby making it also dirty. And that failure in the governance, failure to provide good governance and optimum governance, rational governance, really led to the failures in our economy. And that we really has to rectify, and that the message that we have forgotten, the message that our ancestors left to us, we have forgotten, and as a result we went into this crisis. Now, our political system, we're parliamentary democracy and Westminster parliamentary democracy, but yet we have the president that is elected through general elections. And that is a little inconsistent. And in my view, that inconsistency is starting to create this conflict between power institutions. And that is really leading to this conflict and disagreements really lead to the stalemate in decision making, and it makes it really slow. And as a result, we really start having this disunity in our among our politicians. So we are really most of our politicians now are thinking of amending our constitution and making it properly Westminster parliamentary system with strong prime minister. There has to be one person, one steward that, within the 4-year term could lead the country instead of having nobody in charge, because everybody balances each other out. And that we really want to also are thinking of changing. But again, it's a matter of debate and discussion. It's a single chamber parliament, 76 members, and were elected for 4 years. Last elections was in 2016, and we have 2 major parties. Now in today's parliament we have 2 major parties and 1 member of parliament from 1 small party and 1 independent, and that's basically it. Again, we have proverbs that really were promoting democratic ideals. Although Mongolia was never democratic before the 1990s, but why democracy could stay in Mongolia, could find its roots? Because the underlying mentality was supporting it. So, for example, just one example, worldly debate bears no wrong, warm water's cleaning capacity is strong. So Mongolians were saying, you take something and wash with warm water, it would be much better in terms of becoming clean, right? Talk with your friends and debate with your friends, and the result of the decision will be much less conflicting and controversial than the decision made by one person. That is the fundamental philosophy behind this saying. Now, here I just wanted to show you the red is our party, blue is opposition party, and the yellow are independents and other parties. You can see the dynamism. I really wanted to show you that it is not just one party ruling. It's really fair, open elections that is changing and making the shift of power happening. And now in 2016, we got out of 76 seats, 65 seats. But again, here I want all the parties, including my own party, to remember the saying that carrying the rice the wrong way will get you the dirt on the back way. So Mongols were saying, if you carry the rice and you don't go where you should be going, then you're not gonna get the right results. So do things the right way, and then you can reap the right results. And these results are really showing that, if you were doing things, wrong things, the people were punishing you and giving you less of their trust, and they were changing it. So that is the message, especially now that we're in governing position. That is a very strong message that we should not be forgetting and we should be remembering. We have 11 female members of parliament, so 13. So 13 female members. In other words, in terms of gender equality, we're not perfect, but we are trying to get there. And finally, state great chorale composition. We have state great chorale. We have secretariat that supports the works of the great chorale. We have a speaker, vice speaker. Now in the current parliament, we have 2 vice speakers, one from our party, another one from the opposition party. That is already the established rule of our parliamentary system. And we have a speakers council, and we have 8 standing committees, 19 members in each standing committee. And we have subcommittees. I myself, for example, I am heading human rights subcommittee. And the proverb there is that the state has protocol, the custom has rules. In other words, Mongols were always abiding by the rules. So the word rule of law that concept was already there in the psyche and mentality of the Mongols throughout the centuries, because Mongols, although we're nomads and sometimes we can be unruly, but fundamentally when political issues were there, Mongols wanted rule. Mongols wanted rule-based decision-making, and that was embedded deeply into the culture of Mongols. So, thank you. That's in short. Final comment. the final comment I really wanted to make you is that the wisdom of the steppes. I talked about my culture. I talked about what our ancestors really, transferred to us. But again, that wisdom is in every culture. That wisdom is in your culture as well. But very important thing is that in being engaged in our daily business, we very often forget that very deep wisdom and very simply formulated wisdom. Maybe at times because of that simplicity we think, that's not important. But in reality, they are very complex concepts that are embedded into and encrypted into these words. And if we remember them, no matter how complex our today's life is, there are a lot of solutions in those sayings. So in other words, the whole world is very wise, and they're wise in their own ways. Formulations may be different, but the fundamental values of us as human beings is the same, and that is the cause for celebration. So thank you.
Questions. Come up here and please note that this thing is fully adjustable and it'll click on very quickly like that and then they'll get it figured out. Thank you very much for the talk. I also want to point out for anyone who's concerned, the very talented woman in the back is translating on the fly. So if you're concerned about the noise, I apologize, but we're very lucky to have her and I can't imagine having to do that. I learned two things my freshman year of high school, one of which is very difficult to translate, so we'll spare you. The other one is that the politically correct term for a yurt is a gur. Mm-hmm. How do you pronounce that and why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yurt is politically correct as well.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. But ger is a Mongolian word. Now, we have in Mongolian that word. Our northern Inuit people, reindeer people, their tent in their language and in Mongolian language is called ort. And that is yurt. Yurt is a Turkic term for ger. Ger is a home. So for us Mongolians, the yurt is the home. So therefore in Mongolian we call it ger, in Turkic language, and Turks had their gers. Therefore in Turkic language it was yurt. Europeans were encountering Turks more than Mongols. Therefore, although many of the words are of the same origin, but because they heard it from Turks, they think this is a Turkic word. But these are the terms and words of the nomadic culture and nomadic people. So a lot of words are not only Turkic, it's Mongolian words. And just to, the Turks left Mongolia in the 6th century. Modern Turks that are in Turkey, they lived, and their first Hans lived in Mongolia. And the tomb of their first Han, Bilge Khan, the tomb of their first general, Kultigin, are in Mongolia. And therefore, Turkish presidents, almost every president, when they're elected, they come to pay homage to Mongolia, to their ancestors, and to the tomb of their ancestors. So again, this is a Turkic word, but the same word.
To clarify, Turkmenistan Turks, not Turkey Turks?
Yes.
All of them? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. All
so did
of
Erdogan
them.
come over?
Yeah. For example, Azerbaijani language and Turkic language, 30–40%, or even 60% the same. Turkmeni language and Turkic, in pronunciation, they're different. Oh. But they can understand each other 30–40%. Kyrgyz, Kazakh, they can understand Turks 30–40%. Mongolian and Turkic languages, they have some 2,000
common words. Starting from this, bilge in Turkic means intellect. My son's name is Bilgun, and it means intellect. So there are a lot of words that are of common origin, because the language apparently was the same language, and then it just went into two different, directions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. My wife and I were in Mongolia for about 2.5 weeks, about 2 years ago. You have brought back some fantastic memories. I love the pictures. We were actually there for the opening ceremony of your festival. And I have so many questions, but I'm going to limit it to one. You talk a lot about the nomadic culture, how that's imperative to survive. And in a lot of places we visited, a lot of families were struggling because the youth didn't want to live that nomadic life anymore. Some of the older parents didn't want to live that. So they were starting farms and more permanent camps. But the young were going to, or had been working in the mines, especially down in the Gobi. But when the Chinese stopped mining, there's all this unemployment. They didn't want to go back to the nomadic life. Can you talk a little bit about how that in rural Mongolia, away from Ulaanbaatar, what's changing and how is that affecting, your perception of your own culture?
I think Tsirimot should answer. He's from western, province of Mongolia. He got elected from there, so.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming and participating in this nice evening. And I'm elected western part of Mongolia, and I'm also one of the youngest member of Parliament. 10. And regarding when Mr. Tsogt said about we had a 17% economic growth during the peak era of the minerals, and since the mineral price has down, there were higher rate of unemployment, mostly of them young people, young generation. Since we took the majority seats in the parliament, we are going to introduce new law, support youth development. How can we cope with the unemployment of youth? How can we reduce the unemployment in rural areas? And the main point of this law is you're going to re-educate, train to youth what can be the most valuable jobs, can be profession, instead of going just labor work in the mining. We need to have semi-skilled labor force. And also we invest in rural areas, a factory regarding the agriculture business. We introduced a project which is called 21 and 100. It means we will build 100 factories in 21 provinces, create more jobs. We had experienced a lot. We were very dependent on the mining, but it's not good enough to become everyone has a job. So we need to create the local factories and the local businesses to create more jobs. So that's why Mongolian government get the fund about around 15 million US to support rural areas business. And I would like to add some my ideas to you. Is nowadays we are living a new era of sharing. We are sharing our good experience, bad experience through social network. And so before becoming a member of parliament, I was a businessman. Now I would like to invite you to Mongolia, invest in Mongolia, share Mongolian name. Investing in Mongolia is not investing in Mongolians. It's investing your biggest market, Russia and China. This is the location. This is exactly what you Alaskan can do business for Siberians. We are only just 300 kilometers far from Siberia. You are good at this climate. You are good at doing the minerals industries, doing the business in a cold weather and cold climate. You are good at it. So you can be good at it in Siberia. There are people living, and they need to use the best technology from Alaskan companies, Alaskan technology. Thank you.
Mr. Murat, how is the culture changing? We talked earlier today about the impact in the culture of families and families getting smaller and families moving from rural areas to urban areas. How is that impacting the culture of the people in Mongolia?
Good evening, everybody. And also, I would like to say congratulations on your anniversary.
Mana Mongolta Kazakh Mongol oda хоёр ястан байдаг гэж.
In Mongolia, we have two large ethnic groups.
Манай Баяулгийн аймаг одоо Баруун аймаг танаа энэ нутагта хоёрсоо гэж ярьж болно. Манай Монголын хамгийн өндөрсөх одоо 5000 м өндөр 5 муугдаг гэсэн талдаа 5 муугдын хамгийн өндөрсөнд амьдардаг. Бидэндээс би сонирхож байгаа нэг юм энд бол бүргэд их байгаа юм байна. Бүргэдийн одоо жил болгон 10 сарын 4-нд бүргэдийн баяр болдог. Энэ баяраар танахаас одоо жил болгон жуулчд их нэмэгдэж байгаа.
Just to give you the brief description of my province is the highest elevated the land the point in Mongolia. We are located 5,000 meters above the sea level. And also I saw the one common thing between Alaska and my province, which is the eagle. I saw lots of eagle here. In Mongolia, we have an eagle festival as well. So it's we held the eagle festival every October 4th every year.
Сая Ичолпан гэдэг бас миний сонгогч манай хоёрын охин байгаа. 12 наснда тэр бүргэдийн багаас ангахаа байхад нь ингээд сургаж танахаас носчин гэж олчны тэр сургаснаар тэрний авсан дэмжснээр тэр дэлхийд гараад манай Монголыг дэлхийд таниулсан. Тэр охин маань одоо дөнгөж 15 настай англи хэл бас сурж байгаа, танахаас сургаж байгаа юм гол нь тэр эмхтэйг нь бүргэдээ барьж өөр 12 настай мөртлөө тэр бүргэдээ бас 10 хэдэн хэл бүргэдийг тэр морьтой ингээл хүчин тийм ан хийх бол бас амар ажил биш. Спортын хамгийн одоо дэд одоо хүний юугаа шаарддаг спортын төрөл.
You probably heard about the girl named Alchalpan, and she's an eagle huntress, and she started training the eagle for hunting when she was 12 years old, and she would train the eagle from the very young, and it will take several years to have a really good hunting eagle. So it takes courage and commitment to do that. And she is only like at the time 12 years old. She would lift up the eagle that would weigh around like 12 or 15 pounds at the time. And then now she is learning English, and she is now coming to the United States, and she's promoting Mongolia.
Бүргэд бол тэнгэрлэг амтнд энэ нэг амт нэрээ нөгөө амтны бариулах одоо нүүдэлчний маш уламжил даасан соёл байгаа. Энийг та нар очиад үзээрэй. Одоо танад бас бүргэд их байгаа юм байна. Хамтарч ажиллах бэлэн байна. Манай аймаг манай хоёрогт бол 90 монголчууд жосломхаа та бүхнээс тэгэл бүх талаар нь дэмжиж айл болгон зүгээр хоноод явж бүх боломж байдаг та бүхнээс одоо ямар нэг мөнгө төгрөг нэгдэггүй одоо тийм одоо жосломхаа улсад байгаамаа та нар очаарай тэгэл айлжуулах дэмжээ.
So you can see the hospitality of Mongolian people, my people, through this girl. So we are very the nice people, friendly people, and very eager to welcome you to Mongolia. So if you want to happen to come to Mongolia, so we would be very happy to host you and make you feel like home. So welcome to us, to my province.
Баярлалаа та бүхнийг тэгэл манад айлжуулсныг хөгжүүлэхэд нэмэр болоосаа гэж хүсэж байна. Баярлалаа.
So again, welcome to Mongolia to contribute to the tourism development in Mongolia.
And that was 4 seconds. Thank you very much.
That was Tsogtbaatar Damdin in this Juneau World Affairs Council presentation produced in collaboration with 360 North, with help from Juneau's Rotary Clubs and the Open World Leadership Center. It was recorded March 27, 2017 at 360 in Juneau, with support from Alaska Airlines, Alaska Electric Light and Power Company, Alaska Power and Telephone, Coeur Alaska Incorporated, GCI, Hecla Greens Creek Mining Company, Haight and Associates, the Prospector Hotel, Sea Alaska, and Waskman and Associates Incorporated.